So I am recording this. So my name is Martin Medeiros, and I am a professor here at Chabot College, and I teach economics. And I have a long history with Chabot. I used to be a student at Chabot way back in the day, and I've taught at Chabot since 2008. So I've been here for a while. And I also teach at UC Berkeley Extension, and I also teach at Golden Gate University. And I worked as a professional economist at Bank of America for 8 years. I was a US macroeconomist. And my professional background kind of helps you understand my journey to being a data analyst or doing work as a data analyst. So my profession requires me to work with data. So that's how I got there. But that's not the only path one can take to becoming a data analyst. I'm just going to explain my unique journey and then maybe branch out to let you know that you could get to the same place, but from a different position, at least when it comes to employment. Okay, so let me start. I'm going to share my screen. I have my PowerPoint up. I just got to find it. Okay. There you are. I found it. And again, if you have any questions, just unmute, chime in, and we'll handle it in real time. So there we go. What we're going to do is I'm going to start with my experience and then go over what a data analyst is, what are the skills needed to be a data analyst, what are the employment opportunities to be a data analyst, and how can you actually get the training to start doing work like this and actually have an impact in your job and even in your schoolwork right away. So this is not going to be me telling you that you have to spend 3 years, 4 years, and mastering a number of different technologies in order to do something in this field. I'm going to explain to you how you could actually start very soon, start doing really important work that can get you noticed at your job and help you in your career. So this is going to be something like almost me telling you that you could learn a second language and start getting results after a couple of months of learning this language. Rather than spending years just to be conversational, you're going to be able to understand and use the language quickly. So that's going to be the big takeaway from this presentation. So what about my experience? Well, I started out going to Chabot to get my AA and then transfer to a 4-year university. And I have to admit, my math background coming out of high school was very limited. I was well behind. And the things that I discovered in my time at Chabot and my time when I went to a 4-year university, and even when I went to graduate school, is the most impactful math I took was statistics. Now, there were other forms of math. I've took algebra, took calculus. Statistics was the biggest help when it came to my work as a data analyst. And that's what I really recommend. Stats, stats, stats. Get as familiar as you can with statistics. There's a great book that if you want to just start to learn the basics, it's called The Cartoon Guide to Statistics. You could buy it on Amazon for, I think, $8. That's what I started out with. And I used it for almost through my entire college career. There are other textbooks that could help you, but this is a nice, lighthearted approach to understanding statistics. But you need to know things like mean, mode, and median. Some of the basic statistics that you learn right off the bat. Probabilities, the ANOVA, that stands for the analysis of variance, regressions. These things are central to doing many statistic or data analysis. These are not really complicated subjects. They may be new to you, but with some effort, these are statistical concepts that can be mastered rather quickly. But so what I'm telling you is you don't have to master everything about statistics, but there are some key aspects of it that could really help you when you start to work with data and some of the tools that I'm going to be discussing. Now, some algebra, some calculus can help. It's not required, but the more of the math, the better, what I'm saying. And in my teaching, I've been teaching for 25 years, and I constantly come across students who say, you know what, I'm not a technical person, or I'm not a math person. I have troubles with math. What I want you to do is stop saying that. Everybody has some degree of difficulty with a new subject. And you may struggle at first, but if you are tenacious, if you're stubborn and you stick with it, you'll gain enough mastery of that subject to help you in a field like data analysis. So don't put yourself down. Ask for help if you need it. At Chabot, you have, or any university that you're going to, you're going to have resources, professors that you can actually ask for help. And there is a myriad of online sources that you can use to build up your skill set in this area. So keep a positive attitude. It may not come to you as easily as other people, but I always tell my students, nobody ever asks you if you struggled to understand something. They just care if you understand it. So if your journey to understanding something took a little more effort, nobody will know and nobody will care. What you just got to do is get to that point of understanding. So more the math, the better. I started out with a deficit when I started my college career, but I realized that I needed help in it. And then I just started to focus on that, and that really helped me later on. Now, when I first started, so I graduated from UC Santa Cruz after I transferred over, and then I started graduate school to have a master's in economics. While I am studying for my master's, I'm working at a bank. I worked for Bank of America, and I worked on the cost side of the bank. What do I mean by the cost side? Well, Bank of America is a very large corporation, and they have a lot of people and resources dedicated in supporting the bank, like building vaults, supplying furniture for the branches, purchasing of office supplies. All of that stuff was done out of Livermore, California. And that's where I worked. So I didn't work in a branch. I worked on the cost side of the bank. And I worked as a data entry person. I just entered data from a lot of the fields in the cost side of the bank. They gave me data and I just had to enter it. That's when I first encountered Microsoft Excel, a spreadsheet. Now keep in mind, this is way back in 1991. And so spreadsheets were new to me. Now, everybody is going to have their first exposure to a spreadsheet. And this is basically your first glimpse at how to do data analysis, a spreadsheet. And so what I wanted to do is I kind of realized that this is going to be a big help to me in my career as an economist. So I wanted to know more about it. So one of the things that I did is I took full advantage of all of the training that Bank of America offered. So Bank of America was actually very helpful in offering training in many different fields, one of which was data analysis. And I took a lot of classes in Excel spreadsheets. So I got most of my training in the tools of data analysis on the job. And you want to keep an eye out. If you work for an employer that does offer that, please take advantage of it. But the other thing that I took full advantage of is once I started to gain knowledge in spreadsheets, I realized that the only way I could really flourish and master it is I needed to take on projects. And my job at the time didn't really require me to use Excel at all. So what I did was I volunteered. I went and looked at other coworkers, what they were doing. And I actually, if I thought Excel could help them, I volunteered to help them just so I could get experience. This did two things for me. One, it actually gave me the experience I needed and it helped me with my problem solving skills using Excel. Secondly, it gave me exposure, positive exposure to other people. People started to look at me differently as a helpful source rather than just a coworker that's in the background. So what happened was I started to gain recognition in my department because of my offer to help and really impact other people's work in a positive way. So this is one way for you to gain more experience, is look around you professionally and academically. Your classmates, what are they taking in classes? Is there something you could do to help them so you could actually get an excuse to use a tool that you're going to be using in the future? So this was a big help to me, and I think it could be a help to other people too. Now, so let's talk about data analysis, not a data analyst. The work category of data analysis. So it's basically the process of gathering, analyzing, and reporting on raw data in order to make smart decisions. So in other words, you work with data. And smart decisions requires business intelligence. Now, I use this business intelligence, BI. That's actually a term used in data analysis. There are tools called business intelligence tools, BI tools. And the way you think about it is, in order for you to understand a problem, in order to solve the problem, in many cases, it requires data analysis, analyzing the data to figure out what the problem is and possibly understand the solution. So data, that's what a data analyst does. And the fact that all the actions that we take in our lives, the jobs you work, the entertainment that you consume, all of the decisions that we make every day generates data. And the need to analyze, interpret, and use that data grows every single day. So the need for data analysis also grows. So you could actually start to develop skills in this field. And you don't necessarily have to be a data analyst, but you'll have a lot of work for you because the need for this is growing. So we talked about, broadly speaking, what is data analysis? What about a data analyst? Now that is actually a very specific job title, and there are jobs out there that state data analyst. But I want to make sure that you understand that you could work as a data analyst without that job title. You could have a completely different job title. For example, I was an economist when I worked for Bank of America. I did work as a data analyst. You could work in HR, human resources, and you could actually do work as a data analyst. So what I'm telling you is, even though you're not going for a job that has that specific job title, you could use the skills that a data analyst uses in a different job. And so what I'm telling you is this actually goes beyond it goes to many different industries. Data analysis is in nonprofit as well as for-profit. It's in the public sector. It's in the private sector. Everybody needs help in this. So just because you're not going for a job that says data analyst, you still could be using skills in this particular job title. So what does a data analyst do? Well, in a very broad sense, there's 4 areas that a data analyst works on. One is they have to define a problem. So there's a question or problem, and a data analyst actually helps define that problem. What is it? How do we actually describe it? And then what that data analyst does is that data analyst collects data to help answer those questions, to solve those problems. Collecting data is a big part of data analysis. Once the data is collected, all data has to be cleaned up. Data that is collected seldom ever is in a format that is usable. It has to be cleaned up in some way. Some data is missing, some data is misformatted. It has to be cleaned up. That's a big part of data analysis, cleaning the data. Then finally, you have to set up visuals. You have to set up reports that actually reports on the data that the question you defined, the data that you collected, and the data that you clean. So setting up reports, visuals, analyses is a big part of it. So that's define, collect, clean, and set up. Those are the 4 big areas in data analysis. Now, you could actually specialize in a particular aspect of it. You could specialize in basically collecting data or cleaning data, but these are the areas that data analysts work on. So let's talk about defining the problem. That's this area right here. So when one of the big things is, as a data analyst, you actually have to almost interview your client or the person that you're working for. Interview them in terms of asking questions and getting them to describe to you the questions or problems they're trying to solve. Then once you understand what the questions they're trying to answer, the problems they're trying to solve, you've got to come up with an action plan on how to answer those questions and solve those problems. Then once you come up with a plan, you may work with a team, and then you've got to explain to that team the plan to solve the problem. Now, in many cases, in my consulting business, I work on my own. I don't have a team, so that I don't have to do that. But I've done consulting work for many different companies, and I was a leader on that team that helped them understand the problem we're trying to solve. What about collecting the data? Well, data comes from everywhere. There are many different sources of data. Some of that sources is online. Some of it comes from other databases. Some of it comes from flat data files. Flat data files, that's a fancy way of saying a spreadsheet. Some of it comes from Word documents. There are many different sources of data, and you've got to gather it all up. Now, sometimes the data is in proprietary databases, and you actually have to work with programmers to help extract that data. And sometimes they use this called ETL. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. So programmers are going to help you sometimes get the data. Sometimes you do that work on your own, but sometimes you have to work with programmers to get the data. Once you get the data, you got to aggregate it. Now, that's a fancy word of saying you've got to put the data kind of in one receptacle, one database, or several databases. Data comes from many, many disparate sources. You got to collect them and consolidate them. That's what we mean by aggregate data. Once the data is aggregated, now you got to clean it up. And like I said before, data is always messy. I could tell you stories about data that has many different date formats. Last name comes first, first name comes second, then randomly it's switched. Some fields are formatted in text, some are formatted in number formats. the list goes on, and this has to be cleaned up before it could be used. So I already talked about that. Data validation. Then once the data has been cleaned up, you got to validate it. You got to make sure it's accurate, that it's reflecting the most accurate and correct forms of the data. Then you got to set up visuals. Now, this is kind of what I specialize in data analysis, is setting up the visuals. So sometimes it's called dashboards. This is a way for your client, your boss, whomever you're working for, to actually see the results of your work. And it could be something as simple as creating views in a spreadsheet. It could be as elaborate as creating dashboards. I'm going to show you some examples I've done in the past of dashboards. This is what is visually stunning with data, and this is what really impresses people. If you can create some sophisticated dashboards, this can be used as a great portfolio piece in an interview, and I go over that later on in our talk. And then what you could do is you can automate this process for your client. You can make it so that the reports are updated automatically. You can make it so that the user can actually interact with the data. And when they want to make a change in a date range, everything in your dashboard updates automatically. So automation is another sophisticated and very helpful tool technique that data analysts employ. And you use data visualization tools, and we're going to be going over that in a bit. Some of them you may have heard of, like Power BI or Tableau. These are data visualization tools that allow you to create a dashboard, a visual, and then share it easily to others. Now, if you want to work in this field, what sort of qualifications do you need to do that? Well, typically, you need a bachelor's in this field. Sometimes people have masters, even a PhD, but the bare minimum usually is they require a bachelor's. And what type of bachelor's? Well, a typical degree that tends to complement data analysis is a degree like economics, computer science, any math-related field, especially statistics, and finance. These are not the only ones. And they're not necessarily required. You could actually get a lot of experience professionally that can compensate for any lack of a academic credential. But in Chabot, you could actually have an AA, and that may be sufficient if you complement that with some professional experience and some technical certifications. And you're definitely going to need experience with tools. You're going to need a spreadsheet tool. I'm going to really focus on Excel. Excel is a great way to start your qualifications to do data analysis. So here are some of the tasks or some of the questions data analysts may help somebody answer. So for example, you may be working for a company that manages the delivery of user satisfaction surveys and reports, and results on the data need to be visualized. So in other words, they've got a lot of surveys out there, and they want to find some way of analyzing that data visually. A data analyst can help them do that. You could work with the business line owners to develop requirements to find success metrics to manage and execute analytical projects and evaluation results. Now, I used to do this for a company here in the Bay Area. This was a beef jerky company, and they wanted to find a way to analyze the productivity of workers who were making the beef jerky. And that's basically what that bullet point describes. And I help them design reports that the managers on the floor could input, And then I created reports that managers can read and visualizations that they can look at. You could help people monitor a job process and systems to identify opportunities for improvement. Again, similar to productivity analysis. You could help a company gather new data to answer client questions, collecting and organizing data from multiple sources. You could design, build, and test and maintain back-end code. So you could develop programming skills that could automate data gathering tasks, data visualizations, and you could actually help maintain that code. And finally, you could establish data processes, define data quality criteria, and implement data quality processes. So these are some examples of tasks that a data analyst could do. Believe me, there are more, and there are many other flavors of these specific tasks that are slightly different, but in essence, they cover these categories. Now, if you worked as a strict data analyst, what could you expect in terms of earnings? Well, an entry-level data analyst can be expected to make somewhere in the $50,000 to $65,000 range starting. Now, of course, this varies by job market. In the Bay Area, it could actually be a little bit more than this. In other parts of the state or the country, it could be a little bit less than this. But that's, in essence, what you would expect to make with some of the skills you develop to be a data analyst. Now, once you gain experience, you can move on to the mid-level, and of course, your pay will increase. Mid-level data analysts, you could expect almost up to $100,000 in annual income. And then senior level, it can grow above 100,000. Now, a lot of this depends upon the specific skills you've developed. If they're more general, it'll be more on the lower end. The more specific and high-end skills you develop, that's when you can start to command higher salaries. But what I want you to understand is you don't have to work specifically as a data analyst. The skills you develop that are related to data analysis can enhance your job that's not a data analyst, and it can really enhance your earning potential. So this is not for everybody. Now, what are some of the reasons why somebody would not want to work as a data analyst? Well, one of them is you need to learn a lot of skills. And this, for me, this was actually kind of an attractive aspect of data analysis because I like the fact that there were so many areas I could focus on, so many new technologies, but this could be daunting for people. I'll give you an example. I've been teaching classes in data analysis, dashboards, Excel, and Power BI, and I've been doing this for 20 years. Well, COVID hit, and one of the major programs I teach for at UC Berkeley was canceled. And I took a year off from teaching that course. And during that year, there were so many updates to Microsoft Excel that it took me a long time to actually incorporate them into the new lessons I was going to teach a year later. And that was for somebody who actually pays attention to the developments in Microsoft Excel. So if you're somebody who does not use this every day, it could actually get very, very frustrating that there's so much new things happening and it requires you to keep up on it. So that could actually be a downside for some people. You need to be a self-learner. It's up to you to actually incorporate the new stuff. Another thing, it could be very frustrating because part of your job is to develop unique solutions to a problem, which means there may not be a handbook. There may not be an instruction set. You've got to design it yourself. And a lot of the times what you design doesn't work. And it can be frustrating. So how you handle frustration and problem solving can determine how comfortable you are with this type of profession. And like I said, there's a lot of customized work. So you're not going to be working necessarily with an existing framework. Some of it is going to be developed by you from scratch. And again, for some people, that's not that attractive. And you gotta like working with people, because interacting with people is essential, because you need to get information from them. Asking probing questions, getting the answers that you need is essential. If you're not good at that, it makes your job so much harder. So having good people skills is very important. And that's one thing I don't really cover in this presentation. I don't cover the soft people skills, which are very important. And maybe that could be a follow-up, but your ability to talk to, extract useful information from others, very important. And then deadlines. All of the work you do is going to be on some sort of deadline. And some of the deadlines are unrealistic. And you got to be able to meet that. And for some people, they don't like, that's daunting. So these are some things that can make this particular field unattractive to people. But for some people, these are actually attractive qualities. So just be aware of that. Now, this is the meat of this of this presentation. I really want to make sure that you know what skills you need and how can you start that journey, not just to be a data analyst, but to impact your career right now. And so there's 4 areas that you need to develop skills to be a data analyst. One of them is you got to know spreadsheets, right? And I'll go over which spreadsheet that is in a second. Second one, you need to know SQL, or sometimes called SQL, and that's structured query language. And this is a type of programming language, but it's a specific narrow type of programming language that deals specifically with databases. And then there's other types of programming languages that you will eventually need to know. And then there's what we call BI tools. Remember that first term I used early in the presentation called business intelligence? That's what BI stands for. There are specific BI tools that you need to know. Now let's go over some of the specifics for each category. For spreadsheets, Excel, Excel, Excel. There are other spreadsheets out there. Google Sheets is one of them. There used to be an old one called Lotus 123, but there are other spreadsheets out there, but you gotta focus on Excel. Why? Because of the user base. So many people use this tool. It may not be the best in some people's eyes in terms of data analysis tool, but the fact that so many people use it and so many people are familiar with it makes it the tool that you want to specialize in terms of your spreadsheet knowledge. Now, I'm going to go over the special qualities of Excel and how it overlaps to the other 3 SQL programming and BI tools. What about SQL? Well, there's many different flavors of SQL, one of which is called MySQL. And just please understand that SQL is a particular type of programming language. It's a domain-specific language. That's a fancy way of saying it's very narrow. SQL is a programming language that deals mainly with databases. That's what makes it a domain-specific language. And that's why it's so important to data analysis, as opposed to other types of programming languages like Python, R, and JavaScript. There are more, but these are what you would call general purpose programming languages. And what I mean is you could use Python to do things that have nothing to do with, let's say, data. But Python is a very powerful programming language that can be used with data analysis. And this is a higher level of skill set that could really help you command greater pay in the marketplace when you start to develop skills in Python, R, or JavaScript. My recommendation is to focus on Python, but that's just my opinion. Now, what about BI tools? Again, there are many different types of BI tools. What are some of the popular ones? One of them is called Power BI. That's from Microsoft. So Microsoft's BI tool is called Power BI. Another very popular BI, business intelligence tool, is called Tableau. And there's some others. Qlik is one, and Looker is another one. There are many others I'm not mentioning here. I just came up with 4 in particular. So 4 areas of skills, and I've given you examples of tools in each area. Now, what I want to do is let's focus on Excel for a moment. The unique aspect of Excel is if you start your journey in data analysis in the confines of Excel, what's the great thing is Excel has capabilities that overlap with SQL. They have something called Power Query in Excel that actually can do a lot of what SQL does. So that means at the start of your data analysis journey, you don't necessarily need to know SQL, and you can actually do things in Excel that mimic or are the same as tasks done in SQL. The same thing goes with programming languages. Excel uses 2 types of programming languages, Visual Basic and a new one called M, the letter M. So you could actually have general purpose programming skills in Excel, and you don't necessarily have to branch out to Python, JavaScript, or R right away. Also, BI tools. Excel has BI tools built into it called Power Query, Power Pivot, Power Map, and Power View that allow you to do dashboard type work without having a BI tool specifically. So that's the great thing about Excel is you could actually start your journey in it and develop skills in the other 3 categories and be very, very useful. And you don't need to know those other skills at least right away. You may eventually start to develop those skills, but this is a great place to start. So what I do recommend is if you focus your attention on the left side of this quadrant. Focus on Excel, and then if you're going to develop a skill set in a BI tool, focus on Power BI. Now, you're going to have people who say, hey, no, focus on Tableau. They're not wrong. The reason why I like Power BI is because Power BI is a Microsoft product and Excel is a Microsoft product. And there is some benefits of staying within that family, and it could help you later on. Microsoft Excel is used in many instances as the back end for dashboards created in Power BI. So you could focus on 2 things, Excel and Power BI, and you could be well on your way on developing high-end skill sets to be a data analyst. Now, when we talk about Power BI, there are 3 flavors of Power BI in the Microsoft world. There's Power BI that is specifically in Excel. So Excel has BI tools in that particular program, Excel. But then there's a Power BI that's for your desktop. This is a separate program. You don't need Excel to use it, and you could do a lot of data visualization, you could do a lot of business intelligence work with this free desktop version. It's free. Then they have a online BI service called Power BI Webservice. And this is, again, you don't need Excel to do these BI tools, but this is a way for you to actually publish your work, your dashboards, so anybody can see it. And that's another, so there's 3 flavors, the Excel version, the desktop version, and the online version. I focus most of my attention on the BI tools in Excel, and then I branch out to the other 2 BI flavors, the desktop and the web service. but you can stay within the confines of Excel and learn many BI capabilities. So in Excel, you could look at 4 BI tools in Excel that really go beyond the basics of spreadsheets. And those are Power Pivot, Power Query, Power View, and Power Map. Now, let me emphasize the 2 most important ones, Power Pivot and Power Query. If you actually get familiar with those tools, you are going to impress a lot of people. In addition to the standard spreadsheet skills you'll have to learn in Excel. So standard Excel tools, standard Excel capabilities are one category, and then the higher BI tools within Excel is another category, and they complement each other. So Power Pivot and Power Query greatly enhance Excel's capabilities. And I'll be honest with you, I've been using Excel my entire adult life. I talk with a lot of advanced Excel users, and I ask them, what's your opinion on Power Pivot and Power Query? I would say 3 out of 4 don't know what they are. They don't know what Power Pivot is, and they don't know what Power Query is. Now, that's shocking, but it's also an opportunity. Why is this an opportunity? Because since so many advanced users are not familiar with this capability, if you, as you start learning Excel, you could start being familiar with these 2 tools, Power Query and Power Pivot. If you do that, you could actually develop capabilities that even advanced users do not have, which means you could actually get a leg up on other candidates for a job who may have more experience than you in Excel, but they're not familiar with these cutting edge tools. So that what I want you to understand is the opportunity that's out there where there's these very powerful tools that you can actually start to learn and use right away that people don't really use. So as a standalone BI tool, business intelligence tool, Excel's Power BI tools are intended to allow users to specialize in BI or analytics training to develop data models and calculations and share them directly online. So in other words, you could use Excel as a BI tool. So here is an example of a Power BI desktop. So this is a free software that you could download from Microsoft, and you could start using it to build dashboards, and you don't need Excel to do it. Excel could actually feed your desktop, Power BI desktop with data, and then you could visualize it with the Power BI desktop. But you don't necessarily need, you could actually work with data in Power BI desktop without the need for Excel, but you can use Excel to work with Power BI desktop. So it's independent from Excel. Then you could actually get a subscription for the Power BI Webservice. It's free to create an account, but then if you want to start hosting data visuals for other people to see, you would have to pay for a subscription. But you could actually, again, work with Power BI Webservice. You could work with data, you can create data visualizations, and you won't need Excel, and you won't even need a dedicated computer. You can work with any computer that has access to the internet, and you're creating and storing data to the cloud. So you can see that those are the 3 different options you have. You could create data, and this is why I'm so focused on staying with Excel and Power BI, because they complement each other so well. Now, another BI tool, Tableau, which is very popular, you could use Excel to feed data to that too. So this is not the only path you have to take. but this is the path that I've taken, and there's some benefits from it, and that's what I'm just trying to convey to you. So you can create things on the desktop, your Power BI desktop, and then you could share those visualizations to other people using the Power BI web service. So the Power BI web service and the desktop, they can also complement each other. So here's a good example of a dashboard. A dashboard is simply a bunch of compact graphics that show visualizations of data that usually allow the user to interact with the data. In other words, there are buttons they can push that could change the parameters, and everything updates automatically. Well, on the left is a dashboard created in Excel. On the right is a dashboard created in Power BI desktop. As you can see, you can do a lot of the same things in either tool. I usually stay within Excel, but you can create dashboards that are pretty slick in either one. And I'm going to show you examples of dashboards I've created in Excel that you could start creating right away. And I'm telling you, when people see these things, they're immediately impressed. Especially if they have some familiarity with Excel, they understand, oh my goodness, how did you do that? And I always tell people it's almost like magic tricks for adults. When you show somebody your work, a nice sophisticated dashboard that you've created, the reaction that you get from people is almost the equivalent of a reaction of a 5-year-old who saw a cool magic trick. And that is worth gold in an interview. If you can impress someone who's interviewing you like that, that's just, that's worth a lot, because sometimes it's very difficult to make an impact in an interview because that interviewer has interviewed about 20 people, they're tired, and they heard a lot of the same things. Well, when you show them something unique, something that excites them, that's something that is going to really impress them. And so here's an example of using a Power BI tool in Excel called Power Pivot and making, this is what you see is a relational database type approach to data here in Excel. And you're seeing you could do the exact same thing in Power BI desktop. Again, they work in tandem. So this is a nice graphic where here we have Excel and here we have Power BI. And you can see Excel has a lot of Excel-specific tools like pivot tables, pivot charts, slicers. And Power BI has some specific tools. They have some specific reports that you could only do in Power BI, something called a matrix pivot, certain charts and graphs that you don't have access in Excel. But look at this middle part. These are things that they both can do. So in other words, you could do Power Query is the equivalent of using SQL. And you could do that both in Power BI and Excel. You could use something called Power Pivot, which makes your data into a relational database. And I could go on about that, but that's something very, very useful because it allows you to handle a lot of data in Excel or in Power BI. They have that in common. And they have a certain formula language called DAX that they use in both Power BI and Excel. So there's some overlap. So you can see how this is a nice graphic that shows you the differences between these tools. This is a spreadsheet, and this is a BI tool. And the reason why I'm emphasizing starting with Excel is because Excel has some overlap with BI tools. Excel has overlap with SQL. Excel has overlap with programming languages that you can gain capabilities in every area of data analysis and not have to leave Excel. So anything you build in a data model can be converted into Power BI desktop. So you could build a data model in Excel, and then you can transfer it into a BI tool. It could be Tableau too. So question is, where do you get these skills? Well, there are many classes that you could take at the community college level or at the four-year university level that deal with these specific tools. But I'll be honest with you, a lot of the classes are not targeted to specific data analysis tasks. And that's unfortunate, but that's reality. But you still can get a lot of good information, a lot of good training from classes in college. Your work could be an opportunity for you to get training and access to this. Now, of course, if you work in the service-based industry, let's say you work in retail, there may not be that much opportunity. But if you work in any sort of finance-related work, like I started my job, my career at a bank, finance, and there were opportunities for me to get skills related to data analysis. All you should do is be on the lookout for opportunities to obtain training or exposure to some of the things that we've just covered. So work can be a source, but a lot of this information is online. I cannot tell you how many great tutorials there are on YouTube. I'm going to give you some websites and YouTube channels as reference material, but there's a lot out there and they're great, and you could start learning this right away. One of the things is there is a certification Microsoft offers that deals specifically with Excel, and you could actually take their exam. It's the 77-727 exam in Excel that gives you a certification that could tell an employer that you have a higher level of understanding in Excel. This is a great way if you can't find a class and get a degree that says that you have experience in this. You could specialize and get a certification from Microsoft that you could put on your resume that could help you get a job. There's another great course offered through Coursera, an online offering called the Google Data Analytics Professional Certificate. It's another great way for you to say that you have experience in data analysis, that you may not have the professional experience, but you got the certification that could be enough for you to get an entry-level job in data analysis. And Microsoft offers BI training courses through Microsoft itself. So they have some training material too. One site that I've used in the past that is great, that has great Excel courses and Power BI courses, is called My Online Training Hub. And I've used their materials. They're first rate. I recommend it. Another one is from a gentleman. His name is Chandu, and I've used a lot of his materials, and he's got some training courses in Excel and in Power BI. And there's a great YouTube channel, and it's aptly called How to Become a Data Analyst. And this gentleman has got a lot of great information about what it is to be a data analyst, what sort of tools you need. It should complement what I've just presented, but he's got hundreds of videos in this. These are just a sampling. Now, I've created a page in the Social Sciences Hub that's part of the Economics Hub. So I'm part of the Economics Department at Chabot. The Economics Department has their own, basically, Canvas webpage that's on the Social Sciences Hub. And in that page, I'm going to show it to you right here. I'm going to bring it up. Oh, Chabot Economics Hub. This is the Economics Hub. Can somebody give me a thumbs up to make sure that you actually see this? Are you seeing it? Okay, cool. Thanks. So do you see this little button right here, data visualization? You click on that. I've just started a page with resources on how to get training
and the skills in what we've just described. So this is a work in progress, by the way. This is the start of it, but you have access to it right now. So that's one thing you have access to at Chabot. And let me go back to my PowerPoint. And don't worry, I'm going to have time at the end of this presentation for Q&A. So we go here, we got here. Okay, so here's another recommendation. Oh, by the way, I also have a YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel is called Professor of Economics. And I do have material on not just economics related things, but I have material on data analysis. So that is something else you may want to visit. What I recommend is as soon as you start developing these skill sets, work on creating portfolio pieces. What do I mean by portfolio pieces? I mean, if you created a dashboard for a school project, if you created a dashboard for a work project, and you feel that it utilizes some sophisticated techniques, make sure that you have access to that when you go on an interview and show that to the interviewer as your portfolio piece. And this is something that could be really, really good as a way to impress them. Ideally, you could create your own web page, or if you have a Power BI web service subscription, you could start posting your dashboards there. And it could be a simple way of giving somebody a URL to sample your work. So I definitely recommend you do that. Now, let me show you some of the things that I've created over the years that could give you a sample of what can be done. So let me share here. So this is a dashboard I created. So this shows data for the retail industry in Australia. As you can see here, there's lots of graphics. And what we have here is these interactive buttons on the side. These buttons, by the way, are called slicers. So what I can do is watch, when I click on a button, look at the graphics. I click on the button and notice how the graphics update. I could hold down the shift key and select more than one button and all the data, and I could select different states in Australia. Let me select 4 of them. And you can see here, I get all of the data that's updated automatically. I even have this interactive map here that shows different types of shading. So if I highlight this, you can see how this updates automatically. So this is a dashboard that is interactive with the user. The user can actually make changes and see how things update. Let me show you another one. This is something I did for the city of Berkeley. So this shows all of the different phone calls that go into the city, what departments handled them, were they able to resolve the issues? And what I have here is I have the ability for the user to select a different date, month, and you can see how the data updates automatically. And you can see how every month that has the highest value is highlighted with a different value. For example, if I select January, everything updates automatically. And I have a hyperlink here that could take you to a different page. And here I have these date slicers that allow you to select different areas here, a different month. And I can go back to the dashboard right here. So this is an example of an interactive dashboard. Now, finally, let me give you an example of what a student has done. I encourage students in my economics classes to use Excel to develop their Excel skills and enhance their schoolwork. For example, I had some students do a country profile. What is a country profile? A country profile simply looks at economic data that says something about the health of that country's economy. And what this student did, okay, now watch. Let me show you that one more time. Share Canada. So take a look at this. So if you wanted to look at inflation, you just click on this button right here. Boom, it takes you right to the inflation sheet. You could look at the data, and then if you want to go back, there's a little button that brings you back. A very simple technique that allows a user to navigate to wherever they want to go. But this is a nice technique. Not too many people use in Excel. Very useful, easy to do. And this is some things you could start doing in your schoolwork. So that's basically my introduction to you, and not only to be how to be a data analyst, but how to develop skills that allows you to do work like a data analyst in other parts of your work life. So any questions or comments? Nothing?
Thank you for the presentation.
Oh, you're welcome. So Paul, do you use Excel at all?
Yes, I've used Excel for chemistry class.
Okay, chemistry class. Yeah, and so your chemistry class, there could be an assignment that may not necessarily need to use Excel, but if you see an opportunity to use it, do it, because the more exposure you get to it, the more skills you'll develop, and you'll discover things. I mean, there's many things in Excel that I just stumble across because I needed to solve a problem, and I didn't know that particular tool existed in Excel. The only way I discovered it is because I had a task to do. So the more tasks you have to do in Excel, the more discoveries you'll make, and your skill set will increase. So definitely try it. Who else? Does anyone else want to offer any experiences that they've had in this? Believe me, this is probably one of the most powerful ways for you to enhance your exposure in any professional environment. I always tell people Excel is a back door to a career, to a job. I got my first job as an economist, not because of my economic knowledge, it was because of my Excel skills. I was able to impress the chief economist who interviewed me with some of the work I did in Excel. And that's what got me the job. I beat out candidates who had better qualifications, stronger qualifications in the area of economics, but I had stronger data analytics than they did. And that's what got me my job. So, and it may not be on the job title or the job description. So that's why you need those portfolio pieces when you go into an interview to wow the interviewer when you have the opportunity. So again, it's like magic tricks for adults. So I also highly recommend, again, I will, what I want you to do is in the chat, I have my email address. Copy it, and I'll send you a copy of my PowerPoint. And if you do that, I will. You have access to all the materials. I have hyperlinks in that PowerPoint, so having access to it could be a big help too. So if you send me an email to my Chabot address, I'll be more than happy to share it with everybody. And again, we've got about 5 minutes left. I'm here to answer any questions that you have on it. You're free to leave if you don't have anything more, but this is the place to ask it if you have any sort of questions upon the technologies we've talked about, skills you need, that sort of thing.
Hi, Professor. Thank you for your lecture. It helped me a lot to understanding much of more things. And I currently take business statistic class, so I use Excel a lot in that. And I have a research project in which I'm searching about the social media influence and advantages and disadvantages. So that will help me around to do everything better and make a presentation very well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I recommend that you start. Have you used Power Query yet?
Not yet, but soon I will use it.
Yeah, definitely start using it as soon as possible, because that's one of the things that I've discovered that has the most impact, and people are just wowed on the ability for you to actually establish live data links to online sources and have it refreshed automatically in your data model in Excel.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your input.
Thank you for the lecture. It was really, it was very interesting.
Oh, great. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Again, feel free to email me and I'll send you the PowerPoint.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Hello?
Hi. We just finished up.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's supposed to go to 11:45. If you go to chat, I've got my email address in there. I'll be more happy to share my PowerPoint. I recorded it, and I could share the recording too.
Yeah, absolutely. That would definitely help.
Yeah, so definitely, it's grab the email address. Do you use Excel at all?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things I told people in the presentation is I know a lot of advanced users who just don't know about some of the data analytics capabilities in Excel, and it's something that could give you a leg up on people who are power users of Excel, but they just don't have that knowledge of the capabilities, and so this can give you an advantage over them in maybe some sort of job opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm checking the chat. I don't know if I can find any
Sure,
emails.
I'll put it again. Let me see it right now.
Thank you. Yeah, data analytics, especially in today's economy in the Bay Area, usually requires a lot of data analytics.
Yeah, and so one of the things that do not get properly emphasized is you could do a lot just staying in an Excel. And in my presentation, I don't talk about only staying in Excel. There are 4 areas. There's SQL you need to know about. You need to know about specific programming languages like Python, JavaScript, R, and BI tools, Tableau, Power BI, Looker, Qlik. But the great thing about Excel is Excel has capabilities in each of those other areas. Excel has Power Query, which allows you to do things that you would normally do in SQL. Excel has programming language like Visual Basic and M that allows you to do things like you would do in Python. And Excel has data visualizations that you could do in Excel that you would do in Tableau or Power BI. So you could stay in Excel and actually be capable in those other areas, and it could give you time to actually develop specific skills in those other areas outside of Excel. But that's the great thing about it is you could build upon what you already know. So whatever foundation you build in standard spreadsheet techniques can be enhanced by going into those advanced areas that could allow you to be a data analyst and not leave Excel. But you would eventually want to, if you want to climb the ladder, definitely do it. But it's those, and the fact is, for example, if you go to somebody and they never heard of R, they've never heard of Python, or if they've never heard of even SQL, you're not going to impress them in the same way where you could show them some kick-ass techniques in Excel, which they are familiar with. That's the thing, is their limited familiarity will enhance your prestige because they see it as magic in something that they're familiar with, but they didn't know they were capable of it. If they were not familiar with it in the first place, it's not as impressive.
Exactly.
So that's because I've been in academia a long time, and I know a lot of people who look down upon Excel because it's not as robust as some other, either statistical tools. Programs. Yeah, exactly. But I always tell people 0.5% of people use those other programs compared to maybe 80-90% of people in the in the professional life are familiar with Excel. So whatever its limitations are made up for the fact of its common usage.
Yes.
So I'm just go to it, and then there's just so many great online training sources that you could actually develop these skills on your own. But that's one of the things I said in the presentation. Could be a downside, is so much of this is dependent upon you to find the training sources, right?
Yeah, to vet the information.
Exactly. Ideally, you would think this would be tailor-made for a university, a college, right? Because that's what colleges are supposed to do. But it's frustrating that colleges are so behind, and a lot of it is because of the biases professors have in what they think students should know.
Students should learn.
Exactly. And they're not really, I don't know, it's just frustrating. I mean, I've been beating my head against the wall that I know what impacts what's right from the students, because I see it in the workplace. I see it from my students. Hey, I use this today and I got noticed. I had a student who the professor only used R instead of Excel. And she says, I can't use it because my employer doesn't know what it is. They don't want to use it.
Yeah.
And so
Excel is just a common, general common platform for most companies they use.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a platform that is underutilized in many respects, right?
Yeah.
And so even though there may be some areas where it falters, the fact that you can rely on other aspects of it to do things for you means it's just very versatile. And versatility in many cases is very, very, very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm preaching to the converted.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult having to adapt to many other platforms, though it's likely becoming a trend and other companies are catching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
very
but
quick.
yeah, exactly. But the other thing too is, even though things may change, there may be different technologies and different programs. The concept and the skills for data analysis in general can be reapplied to other tools, right? You need to know about the basics of statistics, right? You need to know, the difference between when to use a scatter plot chart, when to use a pie chart, when to use a bar chart. These are techniques that can be reapplied to a different environment, that you can learn the basics of data analysis in Excel, stay with it as long as it is useful to you, but then transfer a lot of that knowledge to other tools. But just get the understanding of how to analyze data.